like to share with you on this week's Parshas, Yigash, something very nice from the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchok Zatzal. At the end of this week's Parshas, we find that Yosef HaTzadik bought all the land from the Egyptians, and he gave them food. And then it says, Rak bought, however, Admas HaKoyanim, the land that belonged to the priests, he didn't touch. This was like a tax write-off, tax exempt. And then it says, because this was a choik, this was a rule by Paroi, va'ochlu es chukam asher nosem lehem Paroi. They ate their stipend, the ratio that Paroi gave the Kohanim. So we see from this pasuk, the word chukam goes on nourishment, goes on their ratio of food. The Gemara in Beitza, Daf Tezayin Amar Aleph, brings a proof from this pasuk in our parsha to a pasuk that says in Tehillim about Rosh Hashanah. But the Gemara starts off like this: Kol mizonoisav shalodam, all the sustenance, the nourishment from Hashem, ksuvim loim Rosh Hashanah. It gets established in heaven on Rosh Hashanah. Now everyone learns pshat means how much money you're going to make, how much panosa. But you soon see over here the deep pshat from the Levi Yitzchok. And the Gemara said this is what it says in Tehillim: Ki chuk the Yisrael mishpat like Yaakov. There's a judgment that day in Rosh Hashanah in heaven. What's the judgment about? About the chuk of how much money, how much, not money, but how much sustenance and support a Yid will get. The Gemara asks, like, where do you bring a proof that the word choik means like food or nourishment? And the Gemara says, I have two proofs. One from this week's Pasha, but Yigash says, v'ochlu es chukam. They should eat their ratio, their stipend. So we see that choik is connected to achila, eating, nourishing a person's, nourishing oneself. And then the Gemara says another pasuk. It says, Shlomo Melech says in Mishli Perik Lamed pasuk Ches, Hatri feini lechem chuki. Tells the Eibush to please feed me my chuki, my portion, my ratio, my bread. So we see that also choik is connected to a person's sustenance. And that's the pshat. Choik li Yisrael. This is a mishpat about what? Of how much choik, of how much support and nourishment a person should get from Hashem. Asks the Rebbe's father many questions of this Gemara, maybe over 25 questions in the Dik Loshna Gemara over there, and you can look it up in Lekut Levi Yitzchok, Igris Kodesh Daf Reish Pei Aleph. All the questions, we're only going to focus on 2-3 questions. Ask Rabbi Levi Yitzchok, what's the meaning of it in the Gemara? Kol mizonoisav, all your sustenance. As Joshua said, mizonoisav shalodam. Your nourishment, your support, or how much money you're going to make that year, how much panosa. What's the deal kol? Every time it says in Shas the word kol, it means something, you're adding something you wouldn't know on your own. And also, why the Bashar asks, why does it say two psukim? This week's Parshas from Yigash, then a pasuk in Mishli from Shlomo Melech. Once you have a pasuk in the Chumash, it says chukam, v'ochlu es chukam, that's choik. Why do we need another pasuk for in Mishli? In Ksuvim? Many more questions. Answer Rabbi Levi Yitzchok. Everything in Pasuk is exact. I wish I could go into all the details. The word choik has 2 letters, ches and a kuf. And that's why there's 2 psukim, you'll soon see. Said Rabbi Levi Yitzchok, when a person is gebenched on Rosh Hashanah from Hashem, he shouldn't only think that Hashem gives him that day, he decides of how much gashmis, the physical nourishment he's going to, how much money and how much panosa and how much livelihood he's going to make. The Gemara adds the word koil to tell you a person must be healthy, begashmis and beruchnis. Hashem nourishes you. There's achila ruchnis, there's a eating and nourishing yourself in a spiritual way, and there's achila, there's eating and nourishing yourself and your family in a physical way, which is both important. A person has to be healthy physically and spiritually. And that's the dik of the Gemara. Everything on that day Hashem decides. When a woman, lights candles Friday night, she has in her intention, my children should be healthy, but not only healthy physically, which is important, but also spiritually. They should learn good and daven good and have the right Yiras Shamayim, fear of God. They should do the mitzvahs in the proper way. So a person has to be healthy physically and spiritually. And everything is decided on Rosh Hashanah. This is what the Gemara learns over here. Kol mizanois of both your nourishment, achila, in the physical sense, and also in the spiritual sense. And that's where the Gemara brings two psukim. The first pasuk the Gemara says in this week's Parsha is about the Kohanim. The more Kohanim are more removed from the world, they're like a spiritual avodah. That's what the pasuk is hinting. In the pasuk over there, Shlomo Melech, Hatrifeni Lechem Chuki, is going on at the physical gashmias, the physical food and the nourishment and the parnasa, the livelihood that a person needs for all his physical needs. And that's why there's two psukim over here, and that's why it's also hinted in the two letters of Ches and Kuf. The Ches is referring to the spiritual nourishment, and the Kuf, which the left line goes below the line, showing our avodah, our service going into the world, our panasa, we have to be involved in the world, and also over there Hashem gives a person that success. And this is the meaning of the Gemara. Kol mizanoisav, all your nourishment. It says in this expression of Ochla Schukam, the etymology, the root of the word is cheskuf, to teach you that there's two types of nourishment Hashem gives every Yid, and Rosh Hashanah, this is what he decides. And just to conclude, that's why this ches and kuf has one nekuda on top of cholam. It must work together. It's one nekuda that connects both letters to teach you that a person has to be successful, Hashem wants. Physically, the kuf, spiritually, the ches, but it has to be together. If you focus on one without the other, that's not the real panos Hashem wants to give a Yid. So every Yid should be gebenched with kol mizanoisav, all the nourishment a person needs, physically and spiritually.